never imagined that rinsing out a teacup could turn into the most profound experience of my life. The afternoon light lay soft and honeyed across the kitchen counter, and the room held the quiet warmth of chamomile lingering in the air. From the yard came the low, patient sound of a neighbor's sprinkler ticking through its slow rhythm. I had no idea then that this ordinary moment would open a door I had not even noticed was closed. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and write in the comments which city you are listening from. It means a great deal to us. I was 71, a widow living alone for nearly 8 years after my husband's gentle passing. The house had become both my refuge and my quiet companion, filled with familiar creaks, softened corners, and small habits that kept the days steady. I rose each morning, made tea, and moved through the rooms with the unhurried pace of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Still, there were moments when the loneliness settled in, not sharp, but persistent, like a faint draft along the floorboards. One afternoon, the kitchen light began to flicker, dimming and brightening in a way that made the whole room feel uncertain. I tried the switch, checked the bulb, and waited, but the problem did not resolve itself. When the flicker returned again that evening, I knew I needed help, so I made the call and opened the door. He arrived just as the last pale light of day was slipping away from the windows. He was in his early 60s, calm and deliberate, with soft hands that moved with practiced care and a quiet presence that felt immediately trustworthy. He carried his small tool bag with an unhurried steadiness, as if he had nowhere else to be and no need to hurry. When I greeted him, he offered a gentle smile and said, in a warm, unforced voice, that he hoped he could fix the trouble quickly. I thanked him, and we exchanged a few ordinary pleasantries about the weather and the neighborhood. As he set his bag down, I noticed something about him that I did not expect, a tender attentiveness that made the house feel less alone. He began his work at the kitchen switch, kneeling carefully and listening for the faintest sign of the fault. I stayed nearby, drawn into the small, intimate world of his task, where the smell of metal and dust mingled with the lingering chamomile in the air. The tools made a low, steady sound, and the room seemed to grow smaller with two people quietly sharing its space. I found myself standing closer than I had planned, watching his hands move with such patient precision. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, then straightened a small stack of towels on the counter, needing something gentle to do with myself. His breathing was quiet and measured, and the whole atmosphere held a kind of unexpected companionship that made my loneliness feel less heavy. The flicker did not give up easily, and when he paused to test the wiring again, the silence between us opened into conversation. He asked, in that same soft voice, how long the light had been acting up, and I answered more honestly than I had meant to. I told him the house had felt different since my husband died, quieter in ways that were hard to name. He listened without interrupting, and then he said, almost gently, that sometimes a small repair is really about restoring steadiness. I paused when I heard it, because the words carried a double meaning, practical on the surface, yet unmistakably human underneath. He went on to tell me, in a quiet and unguarded way, that he had lost his own marriage years earlier, and that his children lived far away now, leaving him with long evenings and familiar rooms. In that exchange, there was a recognition of loneliness meeting loneliness, offered without drama and received with gratitude. Rain began to tap at the window while he worked, soft at first, then steady enough that it seemed unwise for him to leave too soon. He noticed a second issue, a loose connection near the outlet that could have grown into a larger trouble, and he stayed to correct it properly. I invited him to sit for a moment with a cup of tea, and he accepted with a quiet nod that felt like a gentle second chance. We sat at the same table, looking out at the wet garden, holding our mugs in hands that welcomed the warmth. Time moved differently there, both longer and shorter than it should have been, as if the ordinary rules of hours had loosened their grip. He did not rush, and I did not ask him to leave, because the presence of another thoughtful person in the house had become its own kind of repair. As the tea cooled and the rain continued, we spoke more deeply, letting the conversation settle into the truths we had carried alone for too long. I told him how much I missed the companionship of my husband, not the grand gestures, but the small things, the shared glance across the room, the comfort of another heartbeat nearby. He listened with such quiet attention that I felt seen in a way I had almost forgotten was possible. He told me, in turn, that his life had narrowed into essentials after his marriage ended, and that he had grown used to being self-sufficient, even as he longed for connection. There was no pity between us, only an unexpected and profound understanding, as if we were two people who had learned the language of silence and were now surprised to hear it spoken aloud. When the conversation finally slowed, we sat in a quiet pause, both aware of something important that neither of us had yet named. The moment that followed was small, but it carried the weight of everything we had shared. He set his mug down and reached for my hand, holding it for a brief, deliberate moment with a warm and steady gentleness. His touch did not ask for more than it offered, only acknowledgement, a quiet promise that I was not invisible in this world. I did not pull away, and I did not hurry to explain myself to myself. The sensation was simple and human, a gentle current of connection that made my chest soften. In that instant, I understood with perfect clarity that I felt seen. When he finally prepared to leave, we spoke of practical things with a calm, forward-looking ease, a return visit, perhaps, and a check on the outlet again in a few weeks. I watched him gather his tools, and I stood in the doorway as he stepped out into the damp evening air. After the door clicked shut, I remained still for a moment, listening to the quiet settle back into the house. I looked at the repaired switch, now steady and certain, and I knew that something else had been repaired as well, something in me that had grown tired of carrying grief alone. It is never too late to feel seen.